So tonight is the final program of our fall 2021 series of Public Art Fund talks at the Cooper Union. The series is organized around Public Art Fund's socially relevant and groundbreaking New York City exhibitions. Exhibitions like the one that we'll soon learn more about by Martine Gutierrez. We're so thrilled to be going on our 4th year of hosting this series and partnering with Public Art Fund, an organization that, like the Cooper Union, believes in the fundamental power of connecting creative expression to public spaces and civic life. Our thanks to their team for continuing in their mission of making art accessible to all New Yorkers and for bringing programs such as tonight's with our featured artist Martine Gutierrez in conversation with Katerina Stathopoulou, Associate Curator at Public Art Fund Forward. We can't wait to see what 2022 has in store. So first, it is my pleasure to welcome Nicholas Bohm, Artistic and Executive Director at Public Art Fund, who will introduce tonight's speakers. Please join me in welcoming Nicholas to the stage.
Thank you, Fia. Also a wonderful artist herself. Really a delight to be here with many of you live in person and an even bigger audience joining us virtually. So great to be able to sort of have this experience here with Martine in person, but also welcome those who can't be here in person and perhaps even all around the world. Public Art Fund talks at the Cooper Union are really very much about our shared mission, our belief in artists as a key part of civic dialogue and discourse, and that our city should be a platform for artists, and this opportunity to connect their practice and the practice of public art. Now, Martine Gutierrez is an artist for whom indigeneity has always been an important aspect of her work, so I think it's doubly appropriate that we begin tonight acknowledging our respect and gratitude to the Lenape people, and of course our exhibitions in New York City take place on the traditional homeland of Lenapehoking. I want to also thank donors who helped to make possible this wonderful partnership that brings these talks to this terrific venue at the Cooper Union. And those are Con Edison, the New York State Council on the Arts, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and of course, the wonderful Public Art Fund Board. I'm grateful also to the donors. I think you saw some of them listed, who made Martine's exhibition possible, as well as our wonderful ongoing partner in the bus shelter series, JCDecaux. Martine was born in 1989, is an artist, a multidisciplinary artist, really, performer, writer, musician. She constructs elaborate narrative scenes that subvert pop cultural stereotypes. She explores identity, personal and collective, at the intersections of race, gender, class, indigeneity, and culture. She works across media, photography, billboards, film, video, and even, of course, her extraordinary magazine, Indigenous Woman. Martine received her BFA from RISD in 2012, and her Public Art Fund exhibition, Anti-Icon, which I hope you all got to see in person, recently closed. That was on 300 bus shelters in New York, Chicago, and Boston. It lives on, I think, in our imaginations and also on the Public Art Fund website if you weren't able to see it in person. Martine lives and works in New York, where she's represented by Ryan Lee Gallery, and tonight. Martine is going to be in conversation with the curator of the exhibition, Public Art Fund's Associate Curator, Katerina Stathopoulou. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Martine and Katerina.
Is the microphone working? No. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. For everyone who could be here in person and virtually, I'm going to be in conversation with Martine tonight, as Nicholas mentioned, and at the end, we're going to leave a few minutes for a Q&A with the audience. So please, we encourage you to ask questions. If you're watching from home, you can type your questions through YouTube, and we can ask them here at the microphone at the end. So welcome, Martine. It's so nice to see you and have this opportunity to celebrate anti-icon and you as an artist.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone who wasn't afraid to come in person.
So I wanted to start with just saying a few words about Martine's practice before I pass on the microphone to Martine. So Martine's an artist who, in her practice, really explores identity. She does this through the lens of race, of culture, pop culture, gender, indigeneity, and works in photography, performance, and she's also a very talented writer. So in her practice, she plays a triple role. She is the photographer, the muse, and the maker at the same time. So every single photograph we see that Martine has created is actually a self-portrait that's meticulously constructed, in which she takes on these various personas, which I think is one of the most inspiring and brilliant elements of your practice. She gained widespread recognition in 2018 with her acclaimed body of work, Indigenous Woman, in which she self-published a 124-page book which was filled with self-portraits of Martine. They were meant to look like advertisements, like fashion ads, perfume ads, and they were all these brilliant photographs in which she styled herself. She did her own makeup, had her own props, and she created this phenomenal publication that we see here. Martine, would you like to tell us what we're seeing in these two images, just two examples from Indigenous Woman?
That's me. The one on this side is an ad that obviously is referencing a brand we as Americans buy or look at, CoverGirl, but spelled wrong. There's a T in it. What's it say?
And this whole publication, I would say, are you asking the audience?
Yeah.
Someone needs to shout it out.
Oh, yeah.
Cover Girl.
Yeah. Or Cover T Girl. Up to you.
So for each of the images in this publication, you really transformed yourself into a new role, which is also interesting in thinking of anti-icon, which we'll speak about shortly, which I see almost like an evolution of Indigenous women and of your practice as a whole. So even before Indigenous Women, you had this interest in advertising. You used a billboard for your ISPC project and created your own brand, Martine Jeans, even had a hashtag in 2016, which feels ahead of the game to me. And so it's very interesting to explore your practice in terms of how you look at images, in terms of how advertising plays an instrumental role in the formation of your practice, but also how images circulate. So before we delve into your practice more, I'll hand the mic to you.
Okay, so I got to add to this PowerPoint. What do you see? Do you see a face? Faces? How about here? You see a face? This one was last night. So I feel like this is maybe like the childhood core of my practice. Like looking for faces, looking for some kind of human quality, but more specifically, something that looked like me, something to identify with, and to almost take on life, take on its own narrative. How about here? Do you see a face? And then, do you see a face that is black, or do you see blackface? This is from a body of work called Masking, which was like what year was this? 2019, of Art Forum, which also changed my career. And is this white face? Is this a face? This is probably this is like another form of media. It's not, I would say I see it as glamorous, but I think socially, publicly, it's taboo, or maybe once was taboo. This is referencing Paris Hilton's sex tape. And it was a way that I started to promote a film that I had made during COVID called China Doll, which is the American pronunciation. But at this time, no one knew what it was called. It was just this leaked. Are these people? Are these two human beings? Is that me? And it affected my social network that I had on Instagram. I feel like I didn't understand visibility online until really this year, and it's so engaged with on in terms of sex. I feel like the reason, which goes back to consumerism and marketing, everything is sex. Everything is this kind of either a way for us to feel better about ourselves, to get sex, or to look for it, markets for it. And this also shadow banned my account in an interesting way. And simultaneously was a way for me to research what gets to kind of sit in public avenues as appropriate. How much of your back is allowed, how much of the ass is allowed, how much breast, how much leg before it's considered pornographic, and kind of our measurement of that culturally and how it changes from year to year, and also who changes it, right? We can have Kim Kardashian on the cover of a magazine with her ass out, and it's fashion and it's culture, and that changes everything. So this was another place I put the video, or a teaser for the video. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Pornhub. It's very popular.
So what were people's reactions when you put the China doll
on
Pornhub?
That's not me. I was blonde over COVID. So this was some other more socially palatable version of me, who was very, very popular. and I felt even a pressure to say her, because the power I was given was really exhilarating and also really scary. Just in terms of my proximity to whiteness changing based on something that's hair. And I think I have a quote somewhere about it. Google it. Blonde is the cheapest privilege you can buy. That was one of them. And then this was the official poster, which then later got released at the end. And you can see the title is actually in Mandarin, and porcelain is actually a translation of China, which in English we don't have. The two are synonymous. So, which I think speaks to language and even like an older understanding of marketing. But yeah, this is me as a porcelain doll, and doll being another version of T-girl, and speaking to, you know, a linguistica right now for like whatever I am. I'm like too old to be a Zoomer.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How did you tie in China Doll, the virtual exhibition, with the clips and advertisements on websites like Pornhub? Like, were people aware that it was part of an artistic project, or did you present it as this persona that you were taking on in the video?
I have no idea. That's not. I feel like that's not an artist's. It shouldn't be like an intention to like make someone. I think you can like corral, but where they end up is it's different for everyone. I have no control over the perception of someone else, and I just had to kind of surrender that and say, if I'm looked at as a whore, doesn't matter. Also, like, exciting, because I'm like, not. I'm not.
Is this a good moment to show the first clip?
Yeah.
It'd be great if we could see the...
Roll it. So this was the exhibit, which was like utilizing gamer software to basically construct a gallery, an aspirational gallery, to host the work. And that's the video, which was playing inside on one of these like infinite platforms. And there was a consent form on entry, which basically asked, can I watch you, watch me? I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And I think probably speaks more so to like my own eroticism, but I think that there's, it was interesting watching people that allowed me to watch them, because there was this kind of performative, we're all so self-aware. We're in like the age of everyone owning a camera. So the spectatorship became its own kind of thing. But I also kind of have no idea how people felt about it.
You created China Doll during the pandemic, as well as Anti-Icon, which we'll speak about shortly. Do you think you would have created this like VR experience if it wasn't for the circumstances and the way we've all been forced to sort of move everything online and experience things, including art, virtually?
No. No, it was so much work. It was so taxing. Because I was working with engineers who, trying to explain aesthetics via email is like truly awful. Everything just ended up being simplified down and down and down and down, and even like sending images of an example, which is honestly for me more helpful than words, but that there's still so much. I think I would have to learn how to write in those programs to be interested in doing it again. Oh, do you want this? And then this was a portrait that went nowhere, that I took during the time of making the film, and I felt like very Kate Moss. And I think Kate Moss was almost the first anti-icon. I would never say that to her face. But in terms of an archetype of beauty and culture that we understand and that we celebrate or mimic. And you can see it even, because it's in the swimming pool. It's the same place where I was filming, and it became the backdrop of the series. Just like waiting for light, basically, wrapped in trash.
So the background, yes, both, I guess, China Doll, the portrait that we see here, and Anti-Icon were filmed in the same setting. So this is a nice transition to start talking about Anti-Icon. Anti-Icon is an exhibition of newly commissioned photographs that Public Art Fund commissioned. It was delayed because of the pandemic, and I think it completely transformed the body of work that you actually created because of the circumstances. So for the project, Martine created 10 new portraits of iconic, legendary figures from throughout history, from different regions, from ancient Greece to Assyria, Egypt, figures from pop culture. And the common thread that these figures had was that these were all figures that were resilient. They were leaders in their own way. They led mankind, and they were really models and prototypes for the community. These 10 images were presented on 300 JCDecaux bus shelters in New York, Chicago, and Boston was the new city that we introduced with this project. So it was really wonderful, especially as people were more hesitant to go to museums and galleries, the fact that you could walk through the streets of one of these cities and encounter these works either on your daily commute, on a bus route, when you were just walking around. This project was in over 50 neighborhoods in these 3 cities, so it really had an impact, I think, on the community. You can just see just a map of New York, so you can see the 100 locations that we had here. And maybe we can start with discussing some of the figures that you decided to present in Anti-Icon, and I picked one of my favorites, Mulan, to start the conversation with. It was also the first image that Martine shared with me, so it's very dear to me.
She was the most covered up, which is why I was like, oh, they won't have a problem with this one. And then what was the other one? Aphrodite.
Aphrodite was another one. Yeah, we can look at that one shortly.
And I didn't think anyone would have a problem with that one either. But she was too naked. And I think that that's interesting because that was coming from the school of Instagram, right? Where I know that I could post these images and they wouldn't be taken down. But then I also had, I think I was just in this really horny, bubble in this swimming pool, getting heat stroke all summer. And so I feel like that kind of, I don't know. I've never really felt so comfortable in my body, and I had never felt so brazen. I was walking around our property naked all the time. But in a feral way. It was kind of separate from the internet and Spectator. Was worried about ticks. But I feel like there's that's imprinted in the work, in this kind of, because everything that's a veil happened after. Everything that's it's like a photograph that then has been draped, and then photographed.
I think this is a good moment to show the second clip that we have, which explains your process of working and reworking these images and how you came to the final result with the draped fabrics.
Okay. Do you want commentary?
Yes.
Okay. That's me. This is the pool. And filming is my mother. And these are the photographs as they first were, printed for the first time. And at the time, I was playing with the idea of a logo for Anti-Icon, like the I being that sun, and then the A is the pyramid. But as you can see, like, I am not good at spray painting. And I was like really struggling with like dexterity, and I wanted everything to be like a straight line and even, and you know, symmetry is not, it just wasn't happening. You can see me trying to correct it, and it's just getting worse. And there's like this like quiet frustration.
Can you also comment on your outfit?
It's a painter coverall. It was cold. I know the sun doesn't make it look cold. Get ready for it. I hate it. I hate it.
Well, then don't do it to the next one.
It looks like someone has a vendetta against me. Maybe I like that. I don't like them. Everyone's seen nipple. Everyone's seen a dick. Trying to justify. Maybe not mine.
I don't think anything shows in that one.
No.
I would just do a little graffiti thing on it. Yeah, I think you're right. I like that one better than that one.
What?
I like that painting better than that.
Oh, I don't like this one. This more than this?
No, I like this better.
I didn't think I'd be so attached to the images how they were.
Of course you are.
I mean, they can be shown at a later date, I guess, how I want them.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Now she's a cyborg. The depression. It was hard. It like hurt me. It was weird. Like I've never had to like self-censor before. And that's my privilege. Drop.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that clip. I think it's really fascinating to understand your process. I know you went through a lot of stages trying to mask some of the nudity, taking into consideration the fact that these works were going to be presented in a public setting, which of course is a different audience than people that might be going to a gallery or a museum. And I know you had a number of ideas. One of them was spray painting over breasts or the genitals. And then you had some other ideas. I remember shattered glass that you felt didn't work out. Then you landed on draping these fabulous fabrics. So maybe we can talk about how you came to the conclusion that this was the most appropriate way to present these iconic figures.
Yeah, I feel like the spray paint just looked too messy, and I didn't want to lose elegance, and I wanted I knew that these would exist online. I think that's what I really don't like about being an artist in 2021. There's just no escape of the release of something. It just exists perpetually forever until the internet goes. But I think that there's this. I guess I wanted the idea that there could be two bodies of work that could exist simultaneously, and that I was satisfied with the other one, without it feeling I don't know, like an obligation, you know. And I thought the fabric was really beautiful, in terms of materiality, and you asked why there were even two girls that were in color, and that felt like even an opportunity to like use the red, which is such a marketing color.
Let's talk about the image we're seeing here, Elizabeth more specifically, Queen Elizabeth, which is really striking. Why did you select her as one of the 10 anti-icons to present?
Because I really feel like we all know who she is, or we all have an impression of who she is, because she's been remade so many times, like all of them. They all, for the most part, can exist in like at a Halloween party store, which I was excited about. And I even think before lockdown, that was more so where my brain was going, with this kind of like camp and excess, and yeah, just like gold and sequins or jewels, or what we look at as antiquity and royalty, and then not having access to materials, and you know, using this like electrical cording is what we had, or that's like potting moss on my head, which I did get specifically for this. It wasn't laying around. I went to a garden store, but we used it later. And it's just Mylar. And to me, it almost gave painting, like this was a portrait of her, you know, her head surrounded by lace. And this is like the landscape in the background, even though it's just a reflection of the other side of the pool and the trees before the road.
One thing that we've discussed, which I think is really interesting, is that you selected figures that you thought had an interesting iconography that could be identified in the street without necessarily requiring a lot of context, a lot of, you know, when you have public exhibitions, you often don't have the ability to have didactics, a sign, or anything. Of course, here we had the toppers that had the figures' names, but they're only identified by their first name. It just said Elizabeth by Martine Gutierrez, which again is a play on advertising techniques. What was it about Elizabeth's iconography that drew you to her?
Well, if you remember, I at one point wanted my name not on it at all.
I remember.
And everyone was like, you have to have your name on it. And then I thought maybe it would be cool if it was Martine by Elizabeth. Martine by Cleopatra. Almost like they were dressing up as me. It was too complex.
I just pulled up this image again because this is the graphic identity that we used. And I think an interesting conversation we had, and something that I think steered you away from using the logo, the orange logo that you were spray painting, was the fact that we realized that the exhibition's identity sort of became the brand and the logo for the project. And do you want to talk a little bit about, because we have a fabulous graphic designer in-house, Sarah Jones, who worked closely with you, but the inspiration was yours. Do you want to talk a bit about Anti-Icon and what drew you to this typography, to this title as well?
We were thinking opera, the Met, maybe even a ballet. I liked the idea of this giving character, or all of them giving ensemble together, to even fight this idea that they were all the same person. And I don't know if that happened or not, because I feel like the only people I've talked to really about the project are people that I know. And I've even been standing by them, and people have not known that it's me. And I enjoyed that. I was like, success. But I think, yes, something that could sit in a performance atmosphere. So the letters become taller, and they almost feel there's like something more architectural than, I think fashion would have been shorter. And we've looked at that too.
And something that is critical to this body of work is that you created it knowing that this was going to be presented on bus shelters, on spaces that are traditionally used for advertisements. So can you talk a little bit about the process of how you decided that in this project you wanted to focus on iconic female figures who you see as leaders, who have persevered, have gone through difficulty, who have a shared history of violence, as you've mentioned in the past? Why this project for this platform? And if you want to talk about a specific image, or let me know and we can flip through it.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why it happens. I don't know why. But when it does, it's like, it probably feels like the urge to cheat, or the urge to like steal or something. If I had those, it was like an impulse that I couldn't resist doing. It felt natural to do, and it felt like time to do it. And in that, there's no real study of a consequence of what it would mean when it's out there. And it's been so long since I've been able to make anything without it being just for me, without it going straight into a public venue. And this is something that has always been on my kind of, in the 90s we had those, where all the cards with the phone numbers. Rolodex. Psychological, mental Rolodex. It was, I have to use these girls. Like I've looked at Cleopatra, and she's in other works, just maybe just her eyes, or maybe just her posture, or maybe just her death. But there's like, to pay homage to her, I shot her like 3 times because I really felt like I couldn't do her justice. And yeah, along with Judith. I started with Judith. She really epitomizes for me the blurb. And then there was, I don't know, it just felt like I couldn't capture her spirit or her strength, or like embody something that I want to reach for. Yeah, it feels very Pokemon. I think that's why they collect them, for their power.
I think one very successful element of anti-icon is the way you've utilized the whole frame on these bus shelters. These are approximately 6 foot tall frames, and looking at the example of Judith here, the extended arm over the face, the second arm behind the body, just the curve of the body, you've really taken over the full frame, and that's something that we've discussed that you were very conscious of. Have you presented work at this scale before, and what was your goal with having these very powerful portraits, both of these the facial features of them, but also these are full body portraits. What was it like for you to work at this scale?
I honestly, I think in size. So I knew they'd be large, and I knew that they would be facing people who were just trying to go to work. And that by itself, I was thinking about, maybe my grandmother or my sister's kids, what they would think, looking at when you say scale, do you mean socially, or?
I meant more like the actual physical scale of them.
Yeah, I don't think in that way. This will look great big. I mean, the idea of what do you call it? Like the Madonna, or like some kind of fertility sculpture, like I think has everything to do with size and everything to do with kind of the proximity of being down here and looking up at something that is bigger than you, and that is holds power over you. And so I definitely wanted to capture like a monolith, is that the word? Feeling where I think for all of them, the camera is literally on the ground and I'm standing. And it ends up kind of feeling very just like proportionate, but it was definitely happening, and some of them more than others.
And I'd like to spend a moment talking about Gabriel as a figure, because we've had extensive discussions over primarily the figures depicted in this project have been historically depicted as female, and Gabriel was one where we had very interesting conversations about the fact that often the archangel is presented as male. Why did you decide that you wanted to photograph Gabriel, and what was the significance for this body of work?
I really feel like Gabriel is queer, and I shouldn't have used that word.
We'll delete it.
Yeah, bleep that. Gabriel was. I feel like I feel like a lot of cis women have played Gabriel in film as well. And all of these references also exist in the movies, in cinematography. And I think that was almost more so the first reference before a book. Of course, there's kind of famed portraits that exist online, taken from scripture or taken from tapestry or taken from stone. But the movies, I think, is what we socially understand as the face of these people. And I remember being little and watching like Tilda Swinton in something as the angel Gabriel and thinking, oh, that makes so much sense. Because she truly is, to me, someone that's just her face, even her body can sit in a ambiguous place quite naturally.
And in terms of the props that you used for this, I think you were particularly creative for Gabriel. Do you want to talk a bit about how she or he or they are depicted?
The wings are made out of cardboard. And they, at one point, were going to get tissue paper feathers glued all over them. And this was kind of the pre-shoot to decide, you can't go back after you do something like that. And the hours alone, I was like, is it really worth spending this time over something you don't care about? Or, you won't keep. Like, I really see them going into the recycling at the end of the day. And then the texture-wise, I did all these kind of little paint marks, like very with the intention of them being covered up. And I loved it. I loved like what it looked like. And I loved the kind of pageantry. I feel like we'd wear something like that in church, and you're an angel, and Jesus is born, and and the hair was ribbon, which was spray painted silver. So you can make this at home.
So with these 10 photographs, you really used a do-it-yourself aesthetic, and I know that originally when we first started talking about the project, my understanding was that you were thinking of presenting these figures in more luxurious, elaborate guises, and that the pandemic changed that. And you touched upon it briefly about how your resources changed, your mood, your psychological state. Are you happy with the fact that you decided to go with this stripped down aesthetic and not with the luxury brand aesthetic which you had initially conceived of?
Yeah, I love this series. I think that there's I don't know how it will age. I think it will probably age very well because it's not tied to aesthetics of really anything. It's like some plastic and some cardboard and some metal, and it's more so about the materiality of the thing creating shadow or catching light. And I also, I don't know, I'm so curious how they'll fit into the world's uncensored. However that happens, if it ever happens. Maybe I won't share them. Finally.
I want to circle back to the title of the project, Anti-Icon, because when you first presented the idea for the title, my first question was, why anti-icons and not icons? Can you explain why these figures are anti-icons for you?
I don't think I should. I don't think so. I think it's more interesting to not hear it from me. But I liked the idea that it felt counterintuitive, and that hopefully you are questioning whether you should be celebrating this figure or not, or kind of call into question why. Why is it that we're still talking about these people? And I think even more so, like, why is it that we navigate towards fame and the idea that we want to be known by everyone? Like, why is that? And is it these stories that are telling us that was great, or the retelling of the stories?
One thing that you said to me, which I think is really interesting and ties into this idea of what are these figures? Are they icons, anti-icons? Is you said, either take these figures off their pedestal or make the pedestal bigger. Do you want to speak to that a bit?
I think we just take them off the pedestal. Yeah, I think so, Martine. Just take them off. Like, I think that's even also a part of why materiality it just felt better to use garbage.
To me, by presenting them in this way, and this is my words, not Martine's, it's in a way you're making them more accessible to the general public. It's figures, that people encounter in the streets in their daily commutes, but they're suddenly more approachable than if they were presented, in luxurious attire and with jewels. And there's something that humanizes them, which I think is something that was very captivating and that felt very appropriate for the time that these works were presented during the pandemic.
Good.
I want to open the, I want to allow some time for questions from the audience, but before that, I have one last question for you, and it's about this photograph, a beautiful photograph by Camila Falquez for the New York Times. As we spoke about, everything you do is a self-portrait, and you rarely allow others to photograph you. I want to know about this experience, because you went from telling me that you wanted your face completely covered, potentially wearing a garbage bag or a mask, to posing on a New York City taxi. So I really want to hear more about how you ended up on a New York taxi.
It's true. Well, I feel like I have to stand on a taxi if we're doing this. I have to. It's what I've always wanted. And we have somewhere I'm standing as well. And the guy actually, okay, I'll just finish the story. The guy who's in the car when this was happening, the driver, was watching the photo shoot the entire time. And you could say, like, I don't have a shirt on. And I showed up that way because I knew, if you get there and you'll get self-conscious and maybe you won't, I wanted to give Judith, you can do this. So it felt like the most appropriate way is just to work with what you have. And it was windy, so it just kept blowing open during the shoot. And it's New York, so like it was fine. But the guy who's in the car was watching the shoot the entire time. And when he was asked if he would be down to let me stand on it, he was like, "Oh, of course, is that a Kardashian?" And no. But also cool. Like, I feel like that's another example of like this kind of social cachet of where we're at right now, where the way I look is falling into a cultural norm of beauty, which it wasn't when I was younger. Like I remember it was so hard to just find a Barbie that looked like me. And now, if you don't look like Dua Lipa, you're not going to be able to stand on a car for free. He was really sweet. Yeah, the experience was great. I was really nervous, and it was really. I was like, oh, maybe I can do more of this. And I think it's becoming a part of my practice in general. Collaboration. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think this is a good moment to open it to questions from the audience. You can feel free to raise your hand, and we can pass the mic around.
Hi. Thank you. So this has nothing to do with the artwork, but I'm curious how you chose the space where you showed it, the locations in the city that you showed in the beginning.
It was like a public art fund. I mean, there's only certain bus shelters that were available to me based on JCDecaux availability. So like high traffic, major shopping areas I couldn't really get into. So I got kind of second tier.
I wouldn't say that.
Oh, I shouldn't say that.
No. I just to elaborate on that. We started with a wish list of ideal locations.
Yeah. That's true.
Which included areas like the Lower East Side. I remember you were saying important to you was to be in proximity to cultural institutions and museums whenever possible. So we had shelters close to the New Museum, BAM, the Brooklyn Museum. And so, yeah, the locations, it's very important to Public Art Fund and to Martine as well to be in all 5 boroughs. That's very important in our collaboration with JCDecaux to bring art to communities that don't have as much exposure to art as maybe others. And yeah, we started with, I think, approximately 150 options for bus shelters in New York and narrowed it down to 100, which we felt were the most desirable. Some because of high foot traffic, others were in commercial areas, others were in neighborhoods where we've never done projects before. So it's a combination of things. And it was really exciting to be able to launch the project in Boston for the first time, which is a new city for us. JCDecaux owns the advertising space in the bus shelters there, so we were able to expand to a 3rd city.
We have a question from online that was sent in from someone named Lucy Owen, who says, many of your characters in Anti-Icon are biblical. Can you shed light on connection to veneration / worship of icons and iconography in the Eastern Orthodox sense?
That felt more like a statement than a question. Work. Yeah. There are even, the cast is even larger, if you can believe it. And I think that it probably does shift what the majority is, if anything. That would probably, but they were too scandalous.
Did you think about the commercial value of the number of posters and the days that they were up, the foregone marketing value, if you will, to JCDecaux? And if so, did you calculate it?
Wait, what do you mean?
If JCDecaux is in the advertising business, and so typically those locations are for sale and generate income. And I was just curious if you thought about the value in relationship to your work.
Art is priceless.
Right.
And fashion is a price tag. New quote. I don't think I really thought about it. No, I feel like I was thinking about the opera. I was like, oh, should I make music for this?
Hello.
Hello.
Do you think that people would be prepared to handle nudity in the public space? I mean, what do you think the reaction to that would have been? I mean, what do we feel when we see a naked body in public? What is it that, like, I don't know, we're kind of trying to censor against?
Right. I mean, I can't speak for the public and what they're ready for, but I do think we, like, how do I not use the word conditioned? I think our understanding of what is normal, it has everything to do with what we're being shown every day. And I really feel like we don't question what that is. And so I would love to believe that, like, seeing a body like mine could become normal, become the new normal, become an aspiration, because it is. I'm hot. I feel like, and I'm normal. I am promise. No, I feel like I also think, no, I don't think people are ready. My mom was that was her question for me too. Because obviously she was I was living with her, and she was watching me, roam around. And she, I think if anything, helped nurture my my disappointment in where we are at.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question.
Great, thank you. So I think this project is fascinating because it really encapsulates both the online world. I think it lends itself well to be shown, online, as well as being very physical and having physicality in these bus shelters throughout the city. And so I guess I'm wondering if there are other projects that could come out of this kind of hybrid, what I see as like a hybrid approach to work.
Wait, say that again?
It seems like this is a hybrid, the project works well both online and also in a physical sense by having these bus shelters. And so I think, I don't know, I guess I'm asking, do you think that's the case? And if so, do you think there'll be other projects in a similar way, made in a similar way?
Thank you. I mean, that's your opinion. You think they work well. I think what felt like a success and probably will become part of, hopefully, how I make the next thing, is feeling like each of these girls by themselves can exist on their own and can be printed in a way that doesn't require a bus stop, and also doesn't can be bigger than a page. I think working on Indigenous women, everything started at for a magazine format is quite large, but it's still quite small in like a grand scheme. And so to me, some of those images don't reproduce very well. I don't think they need to be bigger. So thinking big to then make it small, I think is more exciting. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. Martine, thank you for being so generous with your time and your ideas. It was truly a pleasure and an honor to work with you on this project. I've told you before that I think this is one of the highlights of my professional career so far. And we're really glad you could, be here tonight so people could hear from you directly. So thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Katerina.
And we're going to have our next Public Art Fund talk at Cooper Union in January 2022. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you.